I'm glad to see that this video series has been getting some very good response. I like to see all the discussion and even some real-life examples about how we can improve our behavior. There was even a response video from Jim Fear 138 that goes into detail about the differences between the subgroups of bronies, anti-bronies, and even non-bronies, which I think adds a bit more clarity about understanding the different groups. But even with how much we have covered thus far, I believe that there is still so much more that we can discuss here. I would really like to continue the conversation, particularly if it helps others to feel more willing to open up and join the discussion. So with that in mind, I began thinking about the character of Gilda. In my recent review of Griffin the Brush-Off, I came to the conclusion that Gilda is actually rather sensitive. If there is any possibility of anyone around her making fun of her, she tends to assume the worst. The earliest example of this was when Rainbow Dash had convinced Gilda to join her in singing the Junior Speedsters chant. She reluctantly agreed and then saw Pinky laughing afterwards. Now, I'm sure that Pinky did not intend any mistreatment here. It seems to me that Pinky was only enjoying a good laugh about something she saw as fun. But Gilda didn't see it that way. She actually believed that Pinky was trying to make fun of her, and thus she began trying to get Rainbow away from Pinky. And for the rest of the episode, we saw other examples of Gilda overreacting to bad assumptions. So I started to ask myself, why did Gilda keep taking offense so easily? Why did she keep assuming the worst of everyone around her? I also noticed some similar behavior with Trixie. When Twilight stepped forth to save Ponyville from the Ursa Minor, Trixie took it rather personally. We know that Twilight wasn't trying to humiliate Trixie here. She was only trying to stop the danger of a rampaging Ursa. But Trixie didn't see it that way. In fact, she spent her days believing that Twilight was trying to humiliate her. Even to the point of seeking revenge on Twilight. Trixie had taken offense when none had been intended. I believe that there is something very important to learn here. Why we take offense. And if you will bear with me for a few minutes, I would like to discuss something that may be in fact very difficult to understand, but I hope that you will keep an open mind. When we believe or say we have been offended, we usually mean that we are feeling insulted, mistreated, snubbed, or disrespected. And certainly clumsy, embarrassing, unprincipled, and mean-spirited things do occur in our interactions with other people that would allow us to take offense. However, it ultimately is impossible for another person to offend you or to offend me. Indeed, believing that another person offended us is fundamentally false. To be offended is a choice we make. It is not a condition inflicted or imposed upon us by someone or something else. I hope that you will come to realize that there are things to act and things to be acted upon. You and I are agents, and we primarily are to act and not just be acted upon. To believe that someone or something can make us feel offended, angry, hurt, or bitter diminishes our moral agency and transforms us into objects to be acted upon. As agents, however, you and I have the power to act and to choose how we will respond to an offensive or hurtful situation. In many instances, choosing to be offended is a symptom of a much deeper and more serious issue. There will be times when the capacity to conquer offense may seem beyond our reach. In some way and at some time, someone will do or say something that could be considered offensive. Such an event will surely happen to each and every one of us, and it certainly will occur more than once. Though people may not intend to injure or offend us, they nonetheless can be inconsiderate and tactless. You and I cannot control the intentions or behavior of other people. However, we do determine how we will act. Please remember that you and I can choose not to be offended. One of the greatest indicators of our own maturity is revealed in how we respond to the weakness, the inexperience, and the potentially offensive actions of others. A thing, an event, or an expression may be offensive, but you and I can choose not to be offended and to say it doesn't matter. If a person says or does something that we consider offensive, our first obligation is to refuse to take offense and then communicate privately, honestly, and directly with that individual. Such an approach invites inspiration and permits misperceptions to be clarified and true intent to be understood. And now I would like to provide a prime example of a character who chose not to be offended and the impact it had on another person's life. In the classic tale of Les Miserables, the story begins when Jean Valjean has just been released from prison after many years of back-breaking labor. He has been trying to find a place to stay, but the papers that he carries shows to others that he is a convict, and no one is willing to show him any mercy. That is, until a local bishop welcomes him into his home, feeding him dinner and even giving him a place to sleep. But that night, Jean Valjean steals the bishop's silverware and runs off, only to be captured by police and brought back to the bishop. The police believed that Jean had stolen the silverware, but when asking questions about it, the bishop pretends that he had given the silverware to Valjean and even tells him to take 2 silver candlesticks as well, as if he had forgotten to take them. Valjean is completely dumbfounded by this act. The bishop had had the power to enact justice on Valjean and send him back to prison for the rest of his life. Instead, the bishop had chosen not to be offended by Valjean's theft and showed him great mercy. And Valjean's life was forever changed by this one act. He became so touched by the bishop's mercy that he decided to dedicate his life to serving others, making for an inspiring and memorable story. Now, coming back to the subject of anti-bronies, particularly the kind that seek to rile us up with hurtful, embarrassing, and disrespectful words. One of the reasons that bronies are sometimes the target of trolls is because they have found people who are easily offended by their words. And as long as trolls keep finding people who will react with anger, they will keep piling on the hate. As long as they can find people who are doubting in themselves, they will follow them around and keep pestering them relentlessly. But I want each and every one of you to remember, you have a choice. To be offended is a choice we make. It is not a condition inflicted or imposed upon us by someone or something else. There are things to act and things to be acted upon. The truth is, we shouldn't be saying that we have been offended. Instead, the proper phrase should be that we take offense. There is a powerful distinction between these phrases. The former indicates a state of victimhood, while the latter conveys a sense of personal choice. Once we realize and internalize that offense is not imposed upon us, but is instead a personal choice, then we empower ourselves with great clarity as to when and how we should and should not feel offended. Wise indeed is the one who can master his or her emotions to a point where they can simply choose not to be offended. So, will you be someone who will act, or will you be someone who is acted upon? I would like to hear your thoughts about this topic, whether you believe it is a person's choice to be offended. And if you have any real-life examples that have to do with taking offense, I hope that you will share them here. Whether by writing in the comments, sending a lengthy email, or even creating a response video. I would like to encourage more people to take part in the discussion here. And above all, I hope that you will take a moment and ponder these things, and perhaps you may feel inspired to do something more. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.